We are about to be live. Hello, everyone. If you are seeing this, please give us a like and let us know that you are live with us on Facebook. We're coming at you tonight for our Meet the Eco-Artist series. So if you're seeing us, please let us know. We want to know that you're here with us. And if you can see us, hit like. I'm pretty sure we're good to go. We are live. We've got the first viewers coming on in. Thank you guys for being here tonight. We're excited to have you. We're excited to start this program off. As you know, I'm Alexa. We also have Allie here with me tonight, and we have the privilege of welcoming Rick Mills, who is a wonder for the Conservancy and has done so much for us, and has been a part of our longstanding history. This is Teaneck Creek's 20th year, and so it's exciting to have Rick join us for a program this year to kind of reflect on what's gone on at the creek, but also to share about his great work with eco art and art in general. So I wanted to give you guys a brief background on Rick so that you know a little bit more about him, and then we're going to hop into some questions, and Rick's going to share a lot with us as well. So Rick Mills is a painter, printmaker, and environmental artist. Rick was a faculty member at Pratt and a professor at LIU for 28 years, where he taught painting, printmaking, and papermaking. And in addition to being an image maker, his past works really involved an aesthetic that reconnected people to place, which is a great way that he worked here with Teaneck Creek and making our organization and our park a great place for all of us here. And we continue to utilize that legacy. His place-based eco art and public artwork include environmental, cultural history research, interpretation, graphics, landscape design, collaboration, education, and community engagement. You'd see some of Rick's work still in our park when you check out the Fike Lane entrance. Rick was one of the original creators of Teaneck Creek, as I said, and he served as our first project director and the artist in residence for 6 years. And Rick has had his artwork exhibited across the world and in New York, and permanent artworks are in Newark, Morris Plains, and of course here in Teaneck. And he is represented by Blue Mountain Gallery in New York City and Longyear Gallery in Margaretville, New York. And we will post his website if you guys want to see some more of his paintings and pictures of his great work in the comments below. And if you guys have questions as we're going through this program tonight, please feel free to comment them in the comments. We want to see them and ask Rick any of the questions that you may have. I'm going to turn the first question on over to Allie to ask Rick for tonight, and we'll get started with our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great, thanks Alexa. Rick, as Alexa said, we're so happy to have you here today with us. Would you be willing to start by telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I've been a painter since I was in high school and college, and born and raised in New York City, went to public schools there. And in fact, my high school art teacher was kind of the one who saved my life. I was kind of a screw up in high school, and the art classes there, his name is Sal Zaretsky, great painter. He lives around the corner from me here in Teaneck, and we've done studio visits back and forth all these years. And he's 92, and he's having a show coming up at Blue Mountain Gallery. I'm helping his son now organize the show. So
wow.
yeah.
That's really great, Rick, that you're staying local here in Teaneck and also have that such great connection to the community here as well.
Well,
really
local is, there's a famous book by Lucy Lepard, the great feminist writer, art writer, and it's called The Lure of the Local. And it's really about artists who have done exactly that. And she was one of the inspirations for my turn from studio work to getting outdoors and collaborating with people, basically in my own backyard.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What inspired your decision to go from studio work to outdoors?
Sure. Got a few hours here. Well, I basically, Trish and I bought a house in Teaneck. And before that, I've been a landscape painter and a cityscape painter, but Suddenly I owned this little 1/8 of an acre, and I knew it wasn't going to be mine forever, and I wanted it to be something special, and I started gardening. And honestly, the garden, I get so enthused about it. Spent 5 years sort of traveling, looking at gardens, and then we're back onto a park here, a public park in Teaneck, and I started oozing out into the park with my plantings and everything. And at one point, there was basically a knock on the door, and people said, "Wait a minute, you're now gardening in public property." So I ended up on the Parks Advisory Board and in the Environmental Commission, and I started working on a project with local folks, students, etc., who were building a greenway along the Hackensack River in Teaneck. Hackensack River is incredibly polluted. I had taken a boat ride with Hackensack River Keeper, Captain Bill Sheehan. It just absolutely changed my life in terms of how to see this local landscape. And in particular, the Meadowlands, and we're at the very northern end of the Meadowlands. It's a wet landscape. It's a forested, urban wetland now. And so it was the Meadowlands, it was the work on the Hackensack River Greenway. I started making plans. I can share some of these different images here. Let me just, we're sort of struggling with the screen share, but we'll hold on a second. I'll just get this up here. Okay, and then I'm gonna do screen share, and yeah, share screen. I don't know, can you see that? Is that up?
I can't see it yet.
Okay, got it. There's
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, this design here that you see in the middle was my design for a no-mow area. We were simply trying to create a riparian buffer. The river is up here, and prevent runoff from going into the river. So basically, I was walking one day on the Greenway. This is where the art comes in. And I literally stumbled over some stones, and they were rectangular, and I started walking the stones, and I saw they turned a right angle. And I suddenly realized there had been a house there. So I realized that there was a story right there beneath my feet, embedded in the landscape, a story about earlier Teaneck. And I took 9 months off of work with a sabbatical, and started researching local Teaneck history. I mean, everything: environmental history, cultural history. I gathered maps. I interviewed people, spoke to old timers. It just went on and on and on and on. I ended up having an exhibition of what my proposal was to put interpretive, kind of poetic, I call them sign works, signs, art signs, whatever, which are basically collages telling the story of the Hackensack River. So that's kind of how it all began. And it's, how the Puffin Foundation, Perry and Gladys Rosenstein, invited me to come and look at the what was then just vacant, disturbed land behind the Puffin Foundation, and come up with some ideas. So that's basically how that started.
I love that idea of kind of giving a story to the river, kind of making it have a voice, but through the artwork. So that's super interesting to hear, kind of using art to explain the narrative of history, which is such a pillar, obviously, of Teaneck Creek's mission, and probably because of your vision there, Rick, at the beginning of the Conservancy, with a lot of that influence as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's, here's a sign on the Greenway, somewhat like the signs that I've done and the artwork I've done at the Teaneck Creek Conservancy. And this is right near this house that's in the sign you can see here is telling the story of this house on the river and the early Dutch presence. So I'm trying to illuminate, one of the things that was so amazing to me about doing this kind of work, stepping out of the studio. When you're in the studio, it's all your ideas, your struggles, blah, blah, blah. It's, there's that romance of the as I said before, the solitary artist struggling away. And, the feminist movement, the early pioneers of eco-art, they really stressed a collaborative approach. I mean, there were many women involved, and I think that, it's fair to say that women have a different, socialization and an idea about sharing, cooperation, not just going it alone. And so that was, the beginning of my thinking about that. And what was amazing to me when I really got involved with both the Greenway and the Conservancy was that, I mean, I was sort of out of my depth. I had skills as an artist, creative. I could do graphics. I can do, lots of different things. But suddenly, if you want to do something, I don't have to tell you to. I mean, this is public property. And we want to collaborate with educators and students, and you need funding, and you need the politicians. You've got to convince everybody. So, I mean, that's how, it's a much more complicated canvas to work with. And so you have to kind of put your ego aside and cooperate. And it was wonderful. I mean, I worked with scientists and historians. I learned things. We all spoke different languages, but we all heard each other. So, it's an amazing experience to do that.
I like the idea of art being like a language, though, as it being a method of communication, because it really is. I'm obviously your signs are still at Teaneck Creek on our like lane entrance, and so many people stop to look through them because they really talk about the history of the area as a place.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of the times is being lost right now. We don't know the history of the places that we're in necessarily.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I mean, it's just so funny. I've always been, as a painter, my environment has always been very important to me. So when we came here into this little garden in this house, that was one thing. But as I looked around Teaneck, I began always to look sort of at things people didn't see or what had been. And, and of course that begs the question of what have we lost? And where are we now? And what are the choices going forward? I mean, with the Teaneck Creek Conservancy, for instance, I mean, they began to see surveyors' flags on that beautiful 46 acres that nature had begun to reclaim. Very few people had gone in. But, the question becomes, okay, what do you want to do? You want to develop it into another mall? Boy, New Jersey needs another mall, or do you want to save it and treat it with respect and provide access and to try and heal it, and there are stories. I mean, the stories we uncovered through all the exhibitions we had, it's just, it's remarkable. I mean,
yeah, I really enjoy hearing that. When a lot of the work Allie and I have been doing this year is on equity and making sure that places are open and available to everyone. And one of the main things that we have been hearing a lot of is to acknowledge the land that we're on. Mm-hmm. And I think Teaneck Creek had done such a great job of starting that 20 years before it was even, something to consider, that we acknowledged whose land Teaneck Creek was owned by and who lived there and what the history of the land itself was, because it has its own history of the Lenape that lived there. And I know, Rick, you worked on some of that historical context as well. And it's just such a far-reaching and kind of exciting way that was already being done. Especially.
Yeah. I mean, that's what turned me on. I mean, again, I lined up so many photographs here, and there ought to be a way. It's kind of an interesting, basically, I don't know, on my computer here, I must have, I don't know, at least 50 images that kind of tell the story we're talking about in sequence, in a way, a lot of images that you haven't seen. There ought to be a way we can put this up maybe on the web page, but
yeah,
I mean, so here in this thing I'm sharing here, I mean, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And this is one of the things that we found when we came into the Conservancy. Teaneck Creek is down below. in the image. You can see the image, correct, with the building?
Yes.
Yeah. And all of the stuff in the middle is concrete that's been dumped there from construction projects. So, I mean,
Oh,
the
wow.
land has been so violated. This housing development up top, as you're well aware, when that was shoehorned in there, they had the temerity to call it the Highlands. The Highlands. Can you imagine? We're in a wetland. They've raised the land here by what, 12 feet, something like that, and they call it the Highlands. So, I mean, this is what we were
Wow.
kind of dealing with coming in. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Hmm.
It is. It's totally nuts. But yeah, you talk about the land. Let me see. I wanted to sort of mention some of the early conditions. We had to get, when we first started. Let me just share this with you. Typical early. This would be. I don't know. This would be 2001, maybe 2002. We have these beautiful trails in there now, so we're able to provide access. After we became incorporated and got big grants and got the county involved. But in the beginning, trying to walk through, it was just completely and totally overgrown. So we had to get in there with machetes, and we had volunteers come from all kinds of different organizations, just constantly sort of tromping through there and working together to do all of the clearing to start with. And I noticed, I have a question for you guys. You talk about what's going on now. Stormwater. The whole place is kind of a sump where stormwater runs off. And I'm just wondering, there's one particular place in the Conservancy that water comes running down from the Teaneck Ridge. This is a picture I took in '03 after a thunderstorm in Stormwater Canyon, this is an outflow that comes right off the street from above the Conservancy. And the velocity of the water and all the plastics and floatables that come down, I mean, just flood the place. So I'm hoping, I see that we
Can't wait for you to see what it looks like now, Rick.
I'm dying to get there and check it out.
Yeah. So this is Stormwater Canyon, which of those that you are watching is directly next to our 20 Puffin Way parking lot. And this is, as Rick mentioned, water flow off of Teaneck Road that flows into the park. And it really was just a site of quick runoff. The soil erosion was terrible there. We saw a ton of trash. But the restoration work that's being done right now has slowed the flow of that water down. We're seeing standing pools right there. It's really beautifully graded, and there'll be new plantings that are going in. So if you get a chance to stop by over there, you can see it over the fence.
I absolutely, definitely will. For that particular photograph, I waited for a really good thunderstorm to race down there. So I'm going to come down there after a really ferocious thunderstorm and check it out. And then when we first got in there, again, this is probably 2000, 2001, you may recognize this funny fellow here with the mustache. That's our intrepid volunteer, George Wiskakis. And this is—
That's George there? Oh, wow.
Is George here? Is he, he's in the truck. Can you see the truck okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's, that truck has since been removed. So
Plus the mustache too, but.
Plus the mustache has been removed, but that was one of the many items that was dumped here, the debris, which is now gone. But that was part of what we were facing and dealing with in terms of providing access, cleaning things up. I mean, the stories, I was really intensely involved for the first 10 years. And there are just so many important and amazing stories. One thing I'm not sure that too many people appreciate, but if I can just find this, one of the things that people love to visit in the Conservancy is the walking labyrinth.
Yes.
Okay, and that labyrinth you know, that, uh, let me just talk about concrete a little bit here. For people who don't know the Conservancy, it was not terribly polluted. Um, it really suffered from uh, basically the dumping of concrete highway debris from the building of Interstate 80 and 95, which is right around the corner, basically. Can you see this picture of concrete jungle?
Yes.
This is what we're dealing with, slabs of concrete, and this is actually an artwork of mine, paying homage to, obviously, Bob Marley. I'm a fan, but labeling, this was placed next to a huge pile of concrete. Well, I don't have to tell you, or maybe I do have to tell people, the making of the labyrinth was made up of concrete slabs. So we had to move them all in place, and we had the community involved in doing that. And there was another wonderful project by an artist that we brought in, and then that was part of the joy of working there, as I know you know, because you're doing it now with artists, bringing in different artists and you know, holding these exhibitions, competitions to make either ephemeral art or more permanent art. And one of the things that we wanted to do from the beginning was to recycle some of that concrete debris. Well, Lynn Hull, who did Migration Mileposts, whom I'm sure people will know her work if they've come to the Conservancy. She is a trans species artist who really sort of got tired of making sculpture for people and decided to make sculpture for animals. So the problem with using the concrete to make her migration milepost to tell the story of bird migration, how they stop at the Conservancy, one may never have thought of this, but this is Steve Royka and two volunteers trying to lift 300 and 400 pound chunks of concrete onto Steve Royka's truck to take them to a place. Yeah. We brought them to the Puffin parking lot, and then we had Lynn Hull cut the stencils with the different stories about the different birds. There's a picture here of Lynn. Lynn, where are you, Lynn? Lynn, where do we go here? Here we are. I'll open this one up for you also. And you can see the actual work being, the actual artwork being done on this. This is a picture of Lynn Hull on the right, Mary Arnold, who was the executive director at the time, and a colleague of mine at LIU, Dan Christoffel. You can see in the foreground, there's a stencil there, and we are adhering, first of all, taking out the pieces of the stencil, then adhering it to those huge chunks of stone. Then they're going to be reloaded on a truck and brought to a place to be sandblasted. And then they come back and Lynn Hull paints them. So, you know, there's a backstory on all these things, and getting those stones from here to there, interesting.
I can only imagine. We actually had a comment from the audience from Roy, who asked if you remember who made the labyrinth.
Of course I do, and that would be Ariane Burgess. And many volunteers. For people who don't know, if that's Roy, I think that's probably Roy Staub. Hello, Roy. Roy was one of our wonderful eco-artists that came and made just a gorgeous piece. And I know it's up on the website, so people can visit the Teaneck Creek website. But what am I looking for here? I'm looking for the labyrinth. Labyrinth, where did you go? I had everything so beautifully organized. Yeah, the walking labyrinth is done by Ariane Burgess. And let me just get an overall picture of the labyrinth here, at least partial anyway. You know, this is just the beginning of the laying of it. This is Ariane standing in the middle and working with volunteers, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful place. I remember working with her and a collaborator of mine, Blair Hines, a landscape architect. we were trying to, we had the idea of the labyrinth, but then, where do you put it? And literally the park spoke to us, the sort of heart of the park. We walked into the area where it is now, and we looked up, and there was an opening in the sky, a circular opening in the cottonwood trees. And there were cabbage white butterflies just flittering all over, all the, the milkweed and the various weeds that were popped up. And, we just looked at each other and said, this is it, the sunlight streaming. This is where the labyrinth will be. And that's where the labyrinth is. So.
Rick, I have a kind of current picture of the labyrinth in case anyone hasn't seen it. So I'm going to quick share screen for that to show anyone.
Yeah.
This is what it currently looks like.
Oh, gorgeous.
A new tower that's in there, and we put a new gate in a few years ago as well. That is like a welcoming to the labyrinth as well.
Wonderful. I love it. Gorgeous, just gorgeous. Yeah. Kudos, guys. You two are doing great, and so is the Conservancy, which really it makes me so happy. I'm as an artist, I feel like I build paintings, I build gardens. I've done a lot of this kind of work. I love conceiving of the project. I love starting the project. I love, trying to get it off the ground. And of course you worry, will it last? Will it continue? And something as important as the Teaneck Creek Conservancy, having this available to so many people in such a dense part of New Jersey. I mean, it's going on now 21 years. And so I feel like, I feel happy that it continues and people use it and it grows and it's being healed more and you're taking care of it and people are loving it and having weddings there and walking and experiencing nature. So that's good. I'm gonna come down and paint there. I think that that'll be next. So
that's great. We'd love to have you visit the park. I think just to kind of flip back, because you just mentioned that you're painting, you did stop doing eco art for a while. And so can you maybe talk to us about that transition?
Yeah, well, I worked in it for 15 years and, I did a community garden in Englewood. That was the site of a former chop shop. It was a block redevelopment project. I worked on a major public art project in Newark. Teaneck Creek was the biggest one. And to be honest, I got to a point where, and it was true of my teaching also at LIU. I've been there for 28 years. I have something of a handicap. I have MS. And the physical energy that it took to sort of be effective, both as a teacher on my feet all day long, running a big printmaking studio, and then doing the work necessary to, be engaged in a project as large as Teaneck Creek. It just got to a point where I felt like it was just sort of getting to be a bit much for me. And I decided that I really wanted to go back to painting, maybe selfishly, though I think all the work I've done in public with communities and with all these communities within the community have really hopefully informed my painting and given a little more depth to my perception of the landscapes that I look at and paint. And the other thing, honestly, is that it's nice to be in the studio, and if I want to go up to that painting and put a red up in the sky and another mismatched red over there, I can do it. I don't have to apply to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I don't have to run it by 20 people. I can just damn well do it. So there's something to be said about that. It's a long answer, but it's part of the zigzag of as my work as an artist, and I still proselytize. So I'm very much in support of, and I think one of the lessons, I think that, I anticipate your question here, but I think one of the lessons for artists, I mean, here I am, a painter living in Teaneck, discovering a new, deeper meaning of landscape in my backyard garden, and then the parks, and then with Teaneck Creek and other places right in my locale. There's other canvases besides, that canvas that artists can get involved in. I mean, maybe you can do both at the same time. And there's just so much stuff right in front of you that you can do. I mean, that first project that I did with the Hackensack River stories that end up with 23 of these collaged poetic sign works permanently installed on the Hackensack River, telling the stories of the environmental and cultural history. I mean, I didn't ask permission. I created the work, and then I went to the town and I said, hey, I had an exhibition at Fairleigh Dickinson University to present it to the town, to the mayor, to the council. And I said, hey, it's not a bad idea, is it? Let's get some funding for this and make it happen. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do that as an artist. Let me just show you one thing, which I know you know well, but I don't think our audience understands.
Like the ask forgiveness kind of.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Got permission first, forgiveness later, which is also good to get things done, right?
Yeah. I mean, you find a way to do things, right? It's probably a little bit of a small image, darn it, but I wonder if you might have a bigger one, but I'm just going to put this up anyway. This has become an icon, or became an icon. I don't know how small this thing is. This is a diorama. Wish I had a damn bigger picture of this, but I don't. Can I blow this up? I would love
it. It looks pretty big on the screen for us.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So this is a diorama that was made by junior high school students under the auspices of the junior high school teacher, which is, Thomas Jefferson Middle School, right next to the lands of the Teaneck Creek Conservancy, Frank Atoshin. I, showed him the park, talked it up, said, hey, we're going to recycle this stuff, debris, into art. Bring it to your students, see what you can do. They came up with this diorama, which is like 4 feet, of the exact trails that we had proposed early on. They're different now, based on the wetland map that we had. The kids made little toy, out of, metal and so on, little sculptures. We took this 4-foot diorama to the Bergen County Board of Chosen Freeholders. Now, if Adam Strobel's listening, who is very much a part of the Bergen County government, we all laughingly call it the Board of Frozen Tree Holders, but that's okay. The kids brought this to the board, big board meeting at Bergen County, and we showed them the idea of Teaneck Creek. And what were they going to do? Say no? I mean, it was just a slam dunk, and that's how we were able to basically get a lease on the lands for $1 a year.
I love that. And that really speaks to the idea of art as activism too, in a way, because all these students' works came together, and that's what, in a way, inspired what ultimately came to be in the park.
Yeah, exactly. It goes.
Adam just commented he is watching, and he said yes, he's still here. So.
Hi, Adam. How are you? Adam is part of the great team that that is the Teaneck Creek Conservancy, and and anybody listening in who doesn't know all about the Teaneck Creek Conservancy, you guys, you got to get involved. You can volunteer. You can just go for a walk. Kick in a few bucks every year. It's your park. It's your land. When I was working on the sign works, doing the collage work, after I gathered all the research, I had a fellowship, or whatever you call it, at a artist residency in Wyoming. And so I'm doing all these sign works for Teaneck Creek. It's very site specific. So people coming into the studio, they're like, what's that? You know, you have to be there. You have to be here. And so they wanted all the artists at the residency to do a talk to the local townsfolk in Sheridan, Wyoming. And so, you know, the painters talked about their painting, and the musicians talked about the music, and the writers talked about the writers. And I got up and I said, well, it's just beautiful here in Wyoming. Love the state. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm working on environmental problems and telling stories in New Jersey, in the densest, most populated state in the United States, in the most densely populated county, and a little 46-acre place surrounded by basically 800,000 people who need open space and nature. And I said, I've been cruising around your beautiful state, and we were on a 21,000-acre ranch. And I said, I see all the oil wells, the methane drilling. I stood right up to the townsfolk and I said, you too could look like New Jersey. And it was like, okay, that was the message. And it's true. So
Great shocker.
yeah. You got to have a sense of humor.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, takes that, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you need to have the perseverance, but humor helps to get done what the, you know, starting founders of the Conservancy did, to have this idea that kind of came out of, it was brand new and so inspiring, and such a different take on what a park really could be. And utilizing art in such a way that is so unique to the Conservancy is so cool to be a part of.
Yeah, you know, I would urge, you know, all listeners and any artists, painters, find out more about eco art. I mean, people ask me about it all the time: environmental art, eco art. We won't split hairs too much. I mean, there's different approaches to, you know, the definitions of both. But you know, Google it, and I don't know if the Green Museum site is still up. There are so many practitioners. There are so many ideas. As many ideas as there are people and communities to support those ideas. You know, it's kind of endless. I mean, we've done all this ephemeral work, working with pulling vines that are strangling the trees, you know, the porcelain berry, and then creating these beautiful vine balls. It's very simple. It's very ephemeral. That's the kind of work that Roy Staub was doing and does, with just using reeds, and maybe they'll only be there for, you know, a tide or you know, a thunderstorm or a week. I mean, that's it. Other people are doing more permanent things. Other people are doing music, and you know.
I was just going to mention, I saw Sarah was watching our video before, Sarah Duvall, who's on our Eco Art committee, and she does environmental music. But she also kind of rebirthed some of our vine balls not too long ago too. We had a couple new ones find their way into the park that she helped create.
Oh, she does indeed. Yes. You know, it's just, I really got to find a way to get these photographs that I have, because I really want to share them somehow with.
Yeah, we want to see them.
More people. I'm going to think about that, but I had a whole section here just on music. This is a May 2004 concert with Englewood Winds, which is part of Sarah Duvall's group, and an opening of an eco art exhibit in the Puffin Foundations, refeaturing the brownfields of Teaneck Creek artists Bite Back. This was actually around the audience here. It's a little hard to see, but there are proposals from many artists, Brandon Ballinger and Kate Dodd and many others, for projects. You know, we sent out a call, and we had this exhibition. And to open the exhibition, you can see Sarah way in the back playing. She has a wonderful, wonderful spirit, and you know, it's music indoors. It's music in the outdoors in the Conservancy as well.
It's nice to see the inside of the Puffin Cultural Forum. Since we've had COVID, we haven't been able to have indoor events. So to remember what they were like is
I know, I know. We just had an opening up at Longyear Gallery on Saturday, and it was the first time there were so many smiles and hugs and faces. It was just, it was very emotional. You know, it was like people never looked so good. So.
Well, that's great to have these kind of, events. It really shows that, people are brought together by the arts, and it's really like you mentioned before, a language that everyone kind of understands and brings people together. So it's exciting when we can have programs like this to share more about it, but also in-person things. We hope to get back to that, hopefully soon enough.
You will.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will. And of course, the Conservancy, you're outdoors, so there's plenty of air circulation there.
We're definitely still open at Fike Lane and getting people out in our outdoor classroom and trying to utilize that to, have people come and enjoy the park. And we have a bunch of stuff coming up, so we'll keep everyone posted, but it is exciting to see what has been done and even recreate some of the past with some of the ideas that you've brought together.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see, you mentioned Fike Lane. Well, if people are not aware of all of the artwork there, we should just at least at a minimum show them the 5 pipes, which is,
they need to know.
oh my gosh, I mean, look at the 5 pipes. These were, I'll show you a before picture. These are the 5 pipes now that are telling the stories of Teaneck Creek. And again, Eduardo Rebel, so many volunteers of all ages, moved the pipes, painted the pipes. And we have an early image. I don't think you've ever seen this one of where the pipes were originally. If I can find the darn thing, it would have been so much easier to do this without this. Yeah, here they are. There's the 5 pipes in winter. Let me, did that come up or no? Hold on a second. Let me just close this first. Yeah, 5 pipes in window, screen share. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So these, you see that, the Teaneck Creek Debris Winter Olympics.
Goodness.
And
I have
5,
not seen this picture before.
yeah, that's a good one. I have a picture somewhere also of one of the things that we had to do was to really kind of sell this and get input from the public. And again, all the communities within the communities. And so we'd invite high school students, educators, scientists, historians. And on one of the walks, we had Teaneck high school students. We gave them clipboards and we asked them to about each bunch of debris that we found in the park. I mean, everything, the truck that you saw George in, the 5 pipes that are here, you name it, the piles of concrete, just went on and on and on. They had a clipboard. And I have a picture of them here. And when they came to the 5 pipes, they were like, oh my goodness, yes, this absolutely has to be recycled into art. So it was the Teaneck High School students that finally said, go for it, man. And that's how things happen.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And we actually are having discussions right now of revitalizing the 5 pipes and working. Some of the paint's been chipping a little bit. They've obviously been around for a long time at this point. So yeah, so once we finish the restoration, that's one of our big goals.
That's wonderful. I know. Is Carl Hausman still involved?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably the 2nd restoration, but
yeah.
I mean, that's, maintenance.
Keeping it going.
Yeah, you have to maintain the trails. But it's very exciting that people should understand one of the things that was high on our agenda early on in terms of healing the park and some of the disruption of the hydrology, the water flow, was trying to get money to restore the wetlands. And maybe one final little story here, if I can find the thing here. We had applied to the Wetlands Mitigation Council Is this it here? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, I think this is it here. This is just sort of an amazing story. Well, let me tell you while I'm looking for this photograph. The Wetlands Mitigation Council in New Jersey sits on a pile of money that is supposed to be for mitigating wetlands, not surprisingly. And so they had a pile of money and we wanted to apply to them. I think it was for $600,000 to really tackle some of the early restoration. And we went down to the council meeting. It was absolutely remarkable. Oh, I'd love to find that photograph. It's here somewhere because it's, one of those pictures worth 1,000 words things. But long story short, they just put us through so many hoops. We did an incredible presentation with wetland scientists and a very well-known artist, eco-artist called Betty Beaumont, who had done this incredible project of creating an artificial reef off of Fire Island. And so we went down there and we discovered that in their, I think it was 10 years of existence, so far what they had funded was a restoration of 2.5 acres in New Jersey. They were sitting on several $1 million. I mean, it was just mind-boggling. They finally gave us $300,000. So we started the restoration. That's when we did the outdoor classroom and did some of the native plantings up at the Fight Lane end of the park. But now, the big hope was that we would really get to changing the berms, because it was all shifted around when Teaneck Creek was channelized back in the 50s. And now you're doing it. You're doing the final removal of concrete debris. I think the hydrology is going to change. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in terms of tidal flow.
I did find a photo for you. If you want to say, I'll show it to you right now. Hold on.
Oh, good, good.
So this is what Stormwater Canyon looks like right now.
Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah. That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, right? This is right next, I'm standing in this photo next to the shed. I'm kind of leaning a little bit.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so they put in all of these, you can actually see the spot of water right there in the center. It's just groundwater it's come up a little bit and is sitting there. And I don't have it. Don Torino shared a photo the other day with the water flow. It was just gorgeous. It was coming off the road and it looked like a little waterfall. But
we've seen other animals there. It's really great, like little sandpipers that are utilizing the standing water.
Oh, nice. This is really exciting. So it's a little raw around the edges, so we're going to a little art it up a little bit.
Yes.
But I'm telling
you, it's not done
yet. First thunderstorm, you call me. I'll meet you there. I want to see this.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful in the rain.
Yeah. Oh, good. You're making me happy. It's great.
And some of the other, hydrology things that you had mentioned, where the clay cap was, which I know had been utilized in some of the art projects, the clay for the wall at Fife Lane, those images of fish and things like that, that clay is being removed to reconnect the hydrology so that water flow is, it's truly a wetland and the ground can get wet. The clay was there to be an impermeable surface and water slicked right off. So having that be able to recreate that actual wetlands is going to be really exciting and really great for the environment.
Absolutely. Super important. That's really wonderful news. One of the early, part of the history was, as I said, getting people in and getting scientists in to look and assess, what the conditions were. And so there was a lot of that. And we had a guy named Dr. Steve Handel, who is from Rutgers. He's a scientist, a wonderful guy and very interesting. Look him up sometime, Dr. Steve Handel, Handel, I believe. And he walked through with us and we started at the Puffin parking lot and he would, the trails were very rudimentary. It was just, some wood chips that we put down with volunteers. And we walked and we walked and we walked. And he was kind of a little down, because there was so much debris, there was so much disturbance. There were so many invasive species that had taken over. And finally, we got up toward Fike Lane, right kind of where the outdoor classroom is now. And suddenly he lit up. He absolutely lit up. And that whole little triangle off of Fike Lane, and I tried to point this out in my art signs on the edge of, the Fike Lane. He just said, this is wonderful. He said the understory is intact. The wetlands are intact. The plants are here. The native, the understory plants and the native canopy. He said it's all basically like, it looks to me like it was 300 years ago. And, when I heard that, it was like, oh my gosh, there's optimism and hope. We haven't totally destroyed it all and, put up the proverbial parking lot. So, yeah, so obviously you're adding on to that. And it's wonderful news.
Yeah, we're excited to see, what the change will be, and, hopefully it will be, and we know that it will be really great for the environment and even be more inspiring, I think, to artists that are coming in next to see what change can happen over time, and really take an artistic approach to restoration work, which is really cool too, to be able to have kind of an eye. I mean, as you know, we have a committee at the Conservancy that our Eco-Art committee that works really diligently on coming up with ideas and ways that we can engage with the public through this community and public art. So having people engaged that way is also, a wonderful way that we can work together. I do have a question from the audience. It's actually from Adam. What advice do you have for us to help us more engage the public and strengthen volunteer involvement, since we will be having this new park and new perspective?
That's a good question, Adam. Well, all I can do is try and get more artists in there and excited and bring their, crazy, wonderful, creative energy. Artists, are you listening? Are you out there, painters and so on? You heard there's an Eco-Art committee. They could probably use members, volunteers, ideas, and also to apply to see if you can have a project realized. That would be, I think, a good thing. But
shameless plug, we do have a call for artists out right now for anyone that works with mosaics.
Oh, wonderful. It's on the website. It's on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, check out the website. Absolutely. Well, Adam, I'll do everything I can to keep spreading the word. I do wherever I go. And I did invite a bunch of people to, they know me as a painter, a lot of my cohorts currently. And I think there might be some curiosity about where did Mills disappear for 15 years? What was he doing? So I think they'll get interested as well, hopefully.
You want to touch on that for a second? What have you been working on currently?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm actually having a solo exhibition in Margaretville, New York at Longyear Gallery. It opens July 10th. We're having an opening. And I'm showing work that I did during a very difficult 18 months. I've been painting, and it started in the fall of 2019. I have a studio up in the Catskills, and I look out over a meadow and distant hills. And I often just look out at the landscape through my door window, and winter comes, and it's a long 6-month winter. And so you're really indoors. And by March, COVID hit, and we were really locked in. And I really went into a depression. I really couldn't work for 4 months. I was very upset. Did some painting right in the beginning that got sort of very dark and anxious, and finally came out of it during the summer. and started painting the light streaming in. And then as winter came again, light streaming in. And around the summer, around the winter solstice, I started doing work that had light going in and out of the studio at the same time, almost like a double exposure. So I was seeing myself inside in my interior space. At the same time, I was seeing the landscape outside. So there's this kind of inside out quality to the work, and I felt pretty turned inside out. And that's the name of the exhibition, Inside Out. So that's what's coming up now. And
what a great way to kind of explain our shared experience, I think, for all of us over this last year. You know, we've all been stuck inside, kind of yearning to get out. I mean, even at the creek, we've seen so many people that just wanted to be in the park. We had probably the most people visiting when everything else was closed. You know, outside is probably the only escape, but we were trapped in.
yeah,
So what a great way to kind of speak to that. That's beautiful.
smart people going to the park, and when everything opens up again, all the wonderful, marvelous New Jersey malls, I would say skip them all and go to the Teaneck Creek Conservancy. How's that, Adam? What do you think?
I think that's perfect.
I'm sure he agrees.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I'm just going to ask the audience really quick if you have any other questions for Rick as we're starting to close in on last few minutes of our hour with him today. You can leave some comments in the comment box. If you have any questions that we don't get to answer tonight, please leave comments and we will share them with Rick, if anything, to answer those questions. But I think Allie has one last question for us to ask of you, Rick, and then we are going to kind of give everyone a chance if they want to get their last minute questions in and close up for the night.
Yes. I know you kind of touched on a little bit earlier what you would recommend to aspiring artists, but can you tell us also kind of what inspires you to create art?
Well, I'm a person who's very visual, and I like to look carefully. So a lot of my work is observation based. I love painting. I love working with all this colored gook, which is just so wonderful to work with. So there's something about paint in itself that is just wonderful to work with. But I think that I don't know. I think I'm basically kind of an introvert, and a lot of my work has a very solitary feel about it, and I think I communicate that, and I think it's important for me to communicate that. I'm not kind of a wild expressionist. There's a lot of mood, and I think some emotion that comes through in my work. So I think. I don't know what else I would do with myself besides. I mean, I'm not happy unless I'm making things, and it doesn't always have to be a paint on a canvas. I garden a lot. I like to build, and as I said before, I like ideas. I like to start with ideas and pursue them. Sometimes I tell my wife, Trisha, I said, oh man, I've got a good idea. And she goes, oh no, how many years is this going to cost? So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question. It's
No, it does.
It
does. That's perfect. And I love the idea of as art as kind of your way of communicating too, and something that brings you joy and makes you happy.
Yeah.
I think that's all what we need in our lives, all of us.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending the evening with us, Rick, and sharing some of the history of the Conservancy and the great work that you've done with us. And also, I think in re-inspiring us for the next 20 years is where we've been through 20 years and you were here for the first 10 and really kind of seeing what has been and we still have all the potential for what could be, which is so exciting. We have a lot of people saying, thank you, we miss you at the creek on our comments right now. So we'll share all of those well wishes with you. And we thank you so much for being with us and for taking your time. We'd love to share more. Shameless plug, where are you at? What gallery are you at again? Tell us again.
Well, the show coming up is at Long Year Gallery in Margaretville, New York. And I'll be having a show, I think, next year or the year after in New York City at Blue Mountain Gallery.
Great.
But I will see you down the creek. And I'm very glad you asked me to do this with you. It's really an honor and such a pleasure. And you guys, you know.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate it, and we love having you. So I'm going to wish everyone a good night. We have our next program for Meet the Eco-Artist is with Monica Loncola in July, and that is posted on our website and Facebook page. So if you want to see more through this series, please follow. And we do have a program tomorrow night on environmental justice. If anyone is watching, wants to stick around and listen to us chat again, we'd be happy to have you. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We hope you have a great evening. Good night, everyone.
Great. Bye-bye. Thank you. Great job, Alexa and Allie.